Hello everyone, this is Nadine from Marie Fée Tricot, and I'll be showing you how to begin the Labyrinth square. It is a Tunisian crochet square. You see some of it here. Let me see if I can make the camera go up a bit to see better. Okay, slightly better. Okay, let me adjust my camera. Now, to do this particular square, it requires a double-ended Tunisian crochet hook. Okay, I need to... All right, like this. I don't know if you see. A quick reminder, you will need to know some of the basic Tunisian crochet techniques here. You need to know how to do the Tunisian knit stitch, okay, and basic increase, which requires you to just insert your hook between two stitches front to back and pull up a loop. That will be the standard Tunisian increase that is used in this pattern. Now, in Tunisian crochet, if you're familiar, obviously, hopefully you are, each row requires a forward pass and a return pass. In double-ended Tunisian crochet, the forward pass is done using one end of the hook and one strand, and the return pass is used using the second end of the hook and another strand. And that's why we need to turn the work over several times to be able to finish the forward and return passes. It is especially useful to use this Tunisian crochet hook, the double-ended hook, when we work in the round. However, we can also work flat, and this is how this particular square is done. Okay, it's worked flat, but using the double-ended technique. So, in the pattern, I also require 4 stitch markers, okay? And this is the reason for this is very simple. I insert the stitch marker in a particular place to remind myself where to do the increases. That way I don't have to count every time I start a new row, something that I often lose track of, and I often have to start over and frog my work because I missed a stitch or I miscounted and so on. So I often use this method of inserting stitch markers at particular places and moving them up as needed along every row, and they're reminders for me. Okay. So, to begin, we must do a magic circle, or a Tunisian magic circle in this case. So, we start the same way we would for the regular or standard crochet magic circle. So, we just go get our yarn in the circle. Okay, let me set up my arm. Okay, so that the camera sees my fingers here. And we chain 12 in the circle. So, that's the first chain, okay, and we chain 11 more, so like that. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. All right. So now I've got 12 loops on my hook equals 12 stitches to start. Now, as it is the magic loop, the magic circle, at some point you'll be able to pull on this strand to tighten the circle. Right now, we're just gonna work with it very loosely so that we can fit all the loops on this hook. If you've ever worked with a double-ended technique in the round, you know that at several times, at several stages along the round, you have to turn the work over to access the forward and return passes. Eventually here you will have to do the same, but we're still working flat. So now, okay, this is row 1, or the forward pass of row 1 as described in the pattern. I ask that you insert a stitch marker in the 2nd, 5th, 8th, and 11th stitches. Okay, so we're going to begin. Insert in the 2nd. This is 2nd as of this side because the forward pass. Oh, the yarn splits. Okay, so that's the 2nd. Then the 5th. So that's 3, 4, 5. So I don't want to miss my loop here. Okay, so that's 5. Then 8, so that's 6, 7, 8, and 11, which obviously is the last loop before, just before last, second to last. There we go. Now, this is, like I said, the forward pass of the first row, and in double-ended Tunisian crochet, to do the return pass, we turn the work, shift it here, and do the return pass on the other side with the other strand. In this case, it's this other color here. We do our magic knot, and this is the first loop on the hook equals the yarn over that we would normally do when we do a return pass in Tunisian crochet. So we pull through that first loop here for the return pass, then we yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and so on. So be careful not to lose your stitch markers. It doesn't matter if the circle is loose, you'll be able to tighten it later. You want to work with it a little loose in the beginning so that you can fit the loops on the hook. Okay? So that basically, this is the finish row 1 of the labyrinth square. Okay? Now, in a double-ended Tunisian crochet, when you're working flat, you don't turn again. You work on the same side that you just finished every time. So basically, in the pattern, I ask that we do an increase before and after the stitch where the stitch markers are. And in every other stitch, including the stitch marker stitch, we do a Tunisian knit stitch. Okay? So as usual, we don't work the first stitch. The loop is already on the hook here, but we have to do an increase. So as I said, we're doing standard increase. So basically going to get the loop. In this stitch where I have the stitch marker, I do the knit stitch. And here I can move up my stitch marker as a reminder. It's always going to be in that particular stitch. And then I do an increase right after this stitch. Then Tunisian knit stitch in the rest until the next stitch marker. And there we go. So here I have to do another increase, then a knit stitch inside there, and I can move this stitch marker up. Now the first few rows will take a bit more time, especially since you're using the stitch markers and you have to move them up. But after a while, you'll see that the corners will be so evident that you'll know exactly where to do the increases. Right? So we're at the next stitch marker here. Oh, I think I entered my, yeah, that's it. Okay, so we have to do an increase right before. We have to do the knit stitch inside that stitch, move up. Then another increase right after. Then knit stitch, knit stitch. It's getting a little tight here. An increase here before the stitch. Then knit stitch. So move it up. Now another increase right after. And now, because this is just this was the first row, I'll just enter my, or insert my hook here through the vertical bar, okay? Okay, so this is the forward pass of row number 2, right? And we have all of our stitch markers here. And as I said before, double-ended technique, we need to turn the work over, shift this to the other side, and do the return pass. So as usual, yarn over and pull up 1 loop, yarn over, pull up 2. It's a little tight here, but that's okay. Yarn over, pull up 2 loops. There we go. But I'm not really comfortable either. Oop. Yarn over, pull up there. Be careful, like I said, not to lose your stitch markers. These are not the best. They often slide off, but it's what I had at hand. Okay, there we go. I hope the camera's is in focus. All right. It will get easier as you go and as the square gets larger and larger. Now, we're increasing by 8 stitches every row. Okay. There we go. All right. So let's proceed to the next row. I'm going to do a next one to show you again. Again, we don't turn the work when we proceed with the forward pass, when we're working flat with the double-ended hook. Okay, we're staying on this side and we're using this strand here, and we do knit stitches, Tunisian knit stitch until the stitch marker, and again we increase before and after those stitches. Oops, sorry about that. Wait. Okay, so a knit stitch here, then we increase right here, again knit stitch inside. So I will move up my stitch marker, then another increase right after, then knit stitch, Tunisian knit stitch again until the next stitch marker. Now, if you've worked double-ended Tunisian crochet, you obviously know that not all loops can fit on the hook at the same time, because then it starts to, the work is curving a bit. Well, this is a square, even though it's worked flat. As you can see, we're starting to curve, right? So we might not be able to fit all the stitches, or I mean all the loops on the hook at once. So I'm going to do my best to be able to fit as many as I can. Now we're at the stitch marker, so we have to do an increase right there and a Tunisian knit stitch inside that one. So I'm going to move this up. And now increase right after, then Tunisian knit stitch, knit stitch. Now, just a little thing. You may realize that when you get to the stitch, which was the increase of the previous row, right? So let me show you, right? So if you look at this stitch right here, this was the increase of the previous row, right? So it looks a little different from the other stitches, right? Simply because it's a little wider on both sides here. But in Tunisian knit stitch, you still have to insert your hook right between these two bars. Even though they're wider spaced, it doesn't matter. Okay, now I do an increase here. Okay, do I still fit? I don't, let's say I can't fit. It's starting to get tight for me. So right now I'll proceed directly to the return pass, or I'll do a few return pass stitches here. So here we go. Doesn't really matter if the stitch marker is in the front or in the back, as long as you are able to identify which stitch it is. Okay. Now, when I have to go back and forth between forward and return passes, I like to keep 3 loops on the hook like this, so that my tension can remain constant, or as constant as it can be. Now, I haven't finished the forward pass of this current row, so I need to turn my work over again and continue. So this is the increase I did. So I have to do another knit stitch, now another increase. Oh, I forgot to move this one up. So I have to move it up into the correct stitch. So I just did the other increase, and now knit stitch in the next stitches until I get to the next stitch marker, which is the last stitch marker of the row. Now increase here, knit stitch in that stitch, move it up, and now increase again, right? And now knit stitch, and this is the end of the of this row. So as you can see, we have easily 2 vertical bars at the end. We can see them, and right in between there is one little loop here of the other color. So I like to insert my hook basically through, or I should say under, both vertical bars of this one, like that. Okay, we see it, but over the other vertical bar. I'll do another row in a second here, so I'll show again. So now I need to do finish the return pass. Okay. All right. So you start to see how it's shaping up a bit. You're starting to see the square. Now you can decide to pull the middle strand if you wish, right? You can start pulling it to close the circle, but you'll be able to tighten it later, right? So now we're working on this side. And we continue. You see here, the stitch markers were left on the other side, but I'm going to keep track, so don't worry. So now again, the row, basically we do knit stitches in all the stitches until we reach the stitch marker. So where is the stitch marker? There it is, it's this one. So I'm right here, so again, an increase right before, a knit stitch right inside that one. So I'm going to take this one out here. Okay, then an increase again right after. Now we do more knit stitches, Tunisian knit stitch in the rest until we reach the other stitch marker. And it is right, it's this one, so we have to do an increase right there. We do, here I'll remove this for now, we do knit stitch in this one, put this back, okay. An increase there. See, now I'm having trouble. I'm not able to fit all my loops. So I need to start my return pass with the other strand. There we go. Move this, yeah, leave that there. Hope the camera is still in focus, is it? Yeah. In focus enough. Okay, so now I've got 3 loops. I go back to finish my forward pass. There we go. So I continue with the Tunisian knit stitches until I get to the other stitch marker. And we get here to the last stitch again. I want to show you again. You can see the 2 vertical bars right there, and you see this one strand that goes in the middle. So I like to insert my hook basically in between that. So behind the 2 vertical bars, but in front of that other strand. Okay. And now I need to finish my return pass. Oh, I have to watch out. I don't have the best stitch markers here. I don't want to lose them. Don't want them to slip off. There we go. Oop-la. After a while, I drop the stitch markers. We're starting to see the square slowly forming. So we go to the end. There we go. So I just want to show you, right? We're starting to see the square. We're starting to see it, right? My square here. Now, as you increase, you get to row 18, and then you do your finishing row of single crochet stitches all around, right? All around the square. And then when you get to the end, these 2 edges, right? These edges here, let me just go, because you're working flat, so all this will be open, right? So So basically what will happen is that you will be folding that part together and just doing SCs or single crochet stitches along the edge to close, and then you'll slip stitch at the end here. And that's exactly what we did over here. Single crochet stitches all along the edge to close, and then a little slip stitch at the beginning. And that's it. Then you fasten off and you insert, you weave in all your ends and block your work. Always block your work. And you'll have a nice Labyrinth Tunisian crochet square.